All right, boys and girls, today we're on lesson 9.6 on page 539, model equivalent fractions. This will be a great day to use the fraction strips that we made a little bit earlier. Let's start right in. Here we go. It says two or more fractions that name the same amount are called equivalent fractions. You can use a sheet of paper to model fractions equivalent to 1/2. All right. The directions say first, fold a sheet of paper into 2 equal parts. Open the paper and count the parts. And they did that right there. Count the parts. We have 1 and 2, right? 2 equal parts. So there are 2 equal parts, and each part is then 1/2 of the paper. And the boy over there shaded in 1/2 on the left that I kind of boxed in with the yellow pen. Next, fold the paper in half 2 times and then open the paper. And that's what we've done here. They folded it in half this way the first time and then this way the second time. And now we can see we have this section and this section, and this section, and finally this section, right? So there are 4 equal parts, and since there are 4 equal parts, each part is 1/4 of the paper. And so then they wrote 1/4 on each one of those sections. So if we look at the shaded parts, and we'll focus on this bright part right here. The box in red is 1/2, and then we'll kind of highlight in white the 2/4. They are the same, right? So 1/2 equals 2/4. They are equivalent fractions. C, last, fold the paper in half 3 times. And they didn't do that. Okay, but if I have a sheet of paper, there's my beautiful sheet of paper, and I fold it in half once, I fold it in half twice, and then if I fold it in half yet again, I'll get something like this. And I get 8 equal parts. Each part is 1/8 of the paper. So then you would write 1/8 in each box. Okay. Find the fractions equivalent to 1/2 on your paper. And you can use the fraction strips that we built before, or if we look at this, I'll highlight 1/2 in yellow. Here's 1/2 of the paper right here. How many eighths is that? Well, sorry about that. Let's go to a pen. There's 1/8. Here's an 1/8. Here's an 1/8. And here's an 1/8. How many eighths? We have 4 of them are equal to that 1/2. So 1/2, 2/4, and 4/8 are equivalent. They all kind of equal the same amount. All right, let's move over to the next page. Draw a conclusion. Explain how 1/8 parts are equal to 1/4 part on your paper. Okay, so if we look at that other paper again, this was 1/4. Let's see, I'll use maybe yellow here. This is 1/4 of the paper, which is a lot like this part right here, right? That's 1/4. How many eighths is that? Well, there's one here, and there's one here. So that's that 1/4 section right there in red is the same as 2/8. So how many 1/8 parts are equivalent to 1/4? 2 1/8 parts are equivalent And I'll spell equivalent. It's also written right here for us, but I'll spell it out for us. Are equivalent. Equivalent. E Q U I V A L E N T. 2 1/8 parts are equivalent to 1/4. Period. All right. What do you notice about how the numerators changed for the shaded parts as you folded the paper? So as we folded the paper, the numerator, or the top numbers, they stayed the same, right? They were 1/2. If we look at that right there, they were 1/2. Here, they were 1/4. Here, we had 1/8. So the numerators stayed the same. Stayed, that's supposed to be an A. Stayed the same. All right, then what does this tell you about the change in the number of parts? Well, that doesn't tell us anything about the change in the number of parts, so that tells us nothing, okay? But the next part does. It's asking about the denominators. What happens to the denominators as we shaded them in? Well, at this top one, when we shaded it once, we had a denominator of 2. Here, we had a denominator of 4. Here, we had a denominator of 8. Each time we folded the paper, it doubled. The denominator doubled. They doubled. T-H-E-Y, doubled, D-O-U-B-L-E-D. They doubled. All right? And then the next question is, what does this tell us about the change in the size of the parts? Okay, they're getting smaller. Getting smaller. Remember, the more parts we have, the smaller they get. If we have 2 parts, they are going to be bigger than 8 parts. Make a connection. You can use a number line to find equivalent fractions as well. That's a lot like fraction strips. Find a fraction equivalent to 2/3. So we're going to draw a point on the number line to represent 2/3. I'm going to do that in blue. There's 2/3. Use fraction strips to divide the number line into sixths. So use your fraction strips. So we have 0/6, 1/6. Here we had 1/3. That's also going to be the same as 2/6. And then 3/6 is going to be in the middle. 4/6 is going to be above 2/3. So we can identify the fraction that names the same point as 2/3, and that is right up there, 4/6. 4/6 is the same as 2/3. So 2/3 equals 4/6. They are equivalent. Okay, they show the same amount. All right, boys and girls, that's it for me today. Do your best, persevere, show integrity, work hard. As always, this is Mr. P, and I'm